Who doesn't like free things? Everyone likes free things. But if you're going to give me a free meal and it makes me sick badly, well, unless I'm a real Scrooge, I'd have to weigh up. Is it worth the inconvenience of being ill for a free plate of food? I'd rather pay something for it and get something with more sustenance, you know what I mean? Like, they ain't going to keep me on the toilet seat for half the day. So, it's a long way to say ESPN and PBC gave us free cards on the weekend. In fact, the PBC has given us a lot of free stuff recently. They gave us Castano and Charlo, undisputed at 154. Yo, can't argue with that. Can't argue with that. But this week they served us David Benavidez versus David Lemieux for the WBC interim title. So once again, David Benavidez has some claim to a WBC 168-pound title. He blew the other two on the scales and on the coco. Now, David Lemieux put his work in at 160. At 168 in 2022, he's no longer a relevant contender. And anyone with half a brain would have known that this was never going to be a competitive fight. And to call it a world title fight, I don't know, maybe it can barely pass or something resembling a world title fight. Not a ringing endorsement for the sport, though. Let's just say that. Benavidez, slow feet, predictable. If he was to fight Canelo, and Canelo was to lose to David Benavidez, I would suggest that Canelo is on the slide. From the eye test, forget the resume, Canelo's resume is just on another level. But from the eye test, Canelo was just a way superior fighter, even though he's smaller. Now, Canelo started at 154. And the thing is, when you start moving up to 168 and 175, what a lot of people don't realize, you know when they say that Makabu would have been a cherry pick, Makabu is a cruiserweight with a high knockout percentage, and the evidence is online of him flattening good fighters. Not the best, but good fighters. And he has a high KO percentage. It's a dangerous fight, people. And perhaps David Benavidez could use his size and grind down a Canelo. Perhaps. That's always a possibility when you're dealing with exceptionally big people in a weight class, taking on people who started at 2-3 weight classes below. But I'm not impressed by David Benavidez. I'm not. And the PBC, nobody wants to see you waiting around for the Canelo shot like with Charlo and Benavidez. Plant's already had his shot. Make Plant versus Benavidez. Make Plant versus Charlo. Make Plant versus Benavidez. Make Charlo versus Benavidez. Do something there. Do something. And then ESPN and Top Rank followed up and gave the UK another free one with JANIBEK. I can't do the rest of his name right now. Yeah, I mean, unless I take a course in Kazakh. He's competent. He's powerful. He's obviously in very good physical condition. Like the size of him, like he's a big fucking middleweight, bro. Quite tall, full of muscle. There's a specimen. Danny Dignum has never been even spoke about in the domestic shake-up to take on the likes of a Felix Cash, a Eubank, a Bentley, a Udofio, or anybody at 160. In fact, he didn't take on an opponent with a winning record until his 11th fight. And he was clearly out of his depth, as most people knew. Even the JANIBEK pro-Eastern European sect have not gone crazy over this win. Even they haven't gone crazy over it. But JANIBEK did what he had to do, yeah? All he does is fight the opponents in front of him, and that's all he should do. He shouldn't be listening to anybody saying he hasn't fought anybody, he hasn't done this. He shouldn't be listening to that. He just needs to do his job, and he's doing it very well. At the same time, a lot of people seem to think that more established fighters like two-weight champion Andrade should just drop everything and fight JANIBEK because the WBO says, when guys like Charlo on the PBC, Munguia on Golden Boy are being very guarded with who they take on. Triple G is being very guarded with who he takes on, and that's not just in his old age, it's been through most of his career. And yes, he had the issue of trying to get the likes of Cotto to take him on, and Sergio Martinez, when he had the lower tier belt, the WBA strap, I believe. But JANIBEK has to get his numbers up. At the moment, he's not going to get somebody who's earning 2 million or 3 million a fight in the ring because of the risk reward. Yeah? Let's not pretend the risk reward factor doesn't come up in what I'm saying. It does. But until he gets his numbers up and a few more warm bodies, the only opponents who he's going to get in the ring with him is Danny Dignum, that level. Or washed up Endam and never was Rob Brunt. We got to keep it real. But until then, his fan base are going to go with this boogeyman thing, and I don't blame them. But it's a little more complex than that, really, isn't it? Let's keep it real. Because eventually, the right opponent, and I'm not going to say who that is right now, the right opponent is going to be there who can fight, the type of opponent that Bobby's going to have to pay out of his pocket if he wants to advance JANIBEK to go any further. And then we'll see how good he is. It's a little more complex than him just being this boogeyman terrifying everybody, though. It's a little more complex than that. I think Bob is looking at him like the new Triple G. Now, I'm a fan. I was a fan of Triple G as well. Yes, I was. And I'm a fan of JANIBEK. I want to see the knockouts. But I won't be a fan if he has a Triple G career in terms of opponents picked and risk reward. I won't be a fan. I won't be a fan of that. But I want to see the knockouts. I like watching him. Well schooled. Doesn't like feeling his opponent out one bit. You know what I mean? He doesn't like doing that. Although eventually he'll have no option, you know. But so far, so good. I'll say that. Dignum had no right being in a world title fight. And it was a disgrace. Like, in all truth, what was the rush to make this interim fight? What was the rush? Couldn't they have waited until a more suitable opponent could challenge JANIBEK? But this is the problem. When you get guys like JANIBEK who's fought Rob Brandt and Endam and has only had 11 fights or whatever, this is the problem, right? His fan base are going to call everybody cowards, but it's not just the fighter, right? Eddie Hearn, he didn't want to make JANIBEK versus Andrade. Because it's not just Andrade could get beaten, it's the fact that he's got to worry if he can get 4,000 people to turn up. Can't really put the fight on pay-per-view, doesn't have that option. And he doesn't have no options on JANIBEK. So you've got to get your fighter more accreditation before he can step up and get all the names that he was calling out. He wants Charlo, he wants this guy, he wants that guy. How is he calling out Charlo when Top Rank and the PBC ain't even really doing cross-promotion like that? You know, he's calling out Charlo, but it's going to be Danny Dignum Mark II next, isn't it? We know that. Let's keep it real. And it's the WBO, it's their fault more than anything for putting fighters up in them positions so early. Yeah? And occasionally you do get the JANIBEK. He's dangerous, but he's not marketable. Normally they put fighters who ain't shit. They can't do nothing, and they're not marketable either. But JANIBEK has the danger factor. Something to think about. And you can say that makes him a boogeyman. It doesn't make him a boogeyman. Not with 11, 12 fights. The boogeymen of boxing previously had way more fights and did more than beat up a washed up Endam and Rob Brandt. That's not a boogeyman. He's not a boogeyman. Lloyd Marshall is a boogeyman. Do the research. Mike McCallum was a boogeyman. Do the research. Do the research. Post-fight, BUATSI and Richards. I was all up for Joshua BUATSI challenging Bivol for the world title. I mean, if the likes of Danny Dignum and David LEMIEUX can fight for titles in 2022, then let Joshua have his shot. But BUATSI cannot fight for a world title right now. He can't. Because you can't go into world title fights and your coach doesn't have any confidence in your abilities to deal with the top guys right now. After hearing Virgil say they need to work on some more stuff to take on Bivol, I think what was frightening was when Eddie suggested that Beterbiev would be a war, a great fight. Virgil looked at him like crazy, just went totally silent. Just, what are you talking about? You can't do that, Eddie. This was in the post-fight press conference, and whether Joshua BUATSI was still in the fight and wasn't aware of Virgil's take on where he stood amongst the world champions, I'm sure by now he's caught hold of the videos. And BUATSI cannot fight for a world title right now. Not with Virgil Hunter as trainer. I don't know when Virgil thinks he'll be ready, but it can't happen now. BUATSI done a good job. At times, he didn't look like a world beater. He didn't. But he got the job done, and in hindsight, it was a good performance. It was a good performance, but If Virgil says it's too early, then Virgil's the coach. I mean, BUATSI has sacrificed his home comforts to go train over there to be a world champion. I'm just hoping that Virgil's lack of confidence in BUATSI doesn't lead to BUATSI being discouraged, because he was saying he wanted to fight for a world title next. But he's obviously not in tangent with Virgil. The issues I have is Craig Richards done all right against Bivol, and BUATSI just beat Craig. Maybe Virgil is setting his bar higher, but I'm just hoping BUATSI doesn't become discouraged, become impatient, because he is seeing fighters with less ability than he has fighting for belts. So what's next? Anthony Yarde looks like he's going to stay inactive until he's called by one of the sanctioning bodies for the winner of Beterbiev and Smith, and they ain't even fought yet. You know, I've heard some people say, yeah, we should fight Vlasov, and I'm thinking, see, a lot of people don't think about what they're talking about, right? Now, I believe I know why they pulled him out of the Vlasov fight. I believe Virgil pulled him out. Why are you going to fight Vlasov for no belt? But his coach is telling him he's not ready to fight any of the top three, Bivol, Beterbiev, or Smith. But you're going to fight Vlasov for no belt, and Vlasov, in my opinion, beat Joe Smith, just didn't get the decision. What sense does that make? If you're going to fight Vlasov, you might as well fight for titles, if the opportunity's there. It'd be wrong not to talk about Craig Richards, what's next for him. We've got lots of light heavyweights in the country. Whether the cross-promotion fights can happen, we'll have to see. A lot of people have been patting Craig on the back, well done again. And I think a lot of people are going to be like, yo, Craig should be happy with himself. I don't think Craig will be happy, because as well as he's performed against Bivol and BUATSI, that's 2 L's on the bounce. Craig sees himself as a world-class light heavy, a winner, not a bridesmaid. And he shouldn't be happy. As well as he performed, he shouldn't be happy. Some people might think, no, Beatsy should be well chuffed. No. If he believes he's destined for bigger things than that, he shouldn't be happy. Amir Khan, in retirement, not making things easy for himself. He says curries and appalling diet is to blame for Asian fighters not making an impact in boxing. And he says Asians use their background as an excuse for not pursuing dream careers in sport, and it's caused outrage amongst fellow Asians. He said Asians are not really meant to be fighters. That's how people look at us. We're not meant to be good sportsmen and women. Our diet is appalling. Curries. Curry is not the right diet to be a champion. If you put us against a lot of English fighters, their diet is a lot better. They're stronger than us. But obviously I changed my way of living. Luckily I started very young. He said Asian sportsmen and women don't have the dedication. If they see me do it, maybe that can inspire and motivate them. He also said that Asian sports people use their background as an excuse for not pursuing their dreams of a career at the top level of sport. It's an amazing platform for them to see what I've done, and it's possible for them to do the same and achieve what I've achieved, he said. People used to say, we are Muslim, we are Asian, we can't make it in boxing, we're not going to get picked. He said it's an excuse that all Asians use. He used football as an example. There are no Asian footballers, but guess what? They all say, meaning Asians, we won't get picked because we're Asian. I think that's a fucking load of bullshit, really. It's a load of bullshit. Asians, when we can't get to a certain extent, we give up. We don't have it in us. Well, I think there's going to be people who get upset, and there's going to be other people who embrace it as a kick up the arse and let's get busy. Because I have heard certain members of the Asian community questioning why there are black footballers and not Asian footballers. Like, do they like blacks more than Asians? It can't be that the black players may be better. Or like Amir saying maybe, you know what I mean? The West Indian diet, for example, is more conducive to a successful sporting career. Amir's words, not mine. I am not Indian. These are his words. He said it's not a good diet for sport. Now, as a West Indian man, I'm going to tell you, the West Indian diet is good for sport. But as for Asians not being strong, there's been some good Asian weightlifters. I've seen them in the Commonwealth Games, the Olympics, etc., other games and events. So they can be pretty strong, and obviously they've had some great cricketers. Cricket is more physically demanding than ever. They train way harder than they did back in the day, so I don't follow it like that. I don't know, maybe he's trying to motivate the Indians to step their game up? Or is there something else underlying behind what he's saying? Because just the other week on Sports Talk, on TalkSport, he was talking about Asian boxers being jealous of him or having a problem with him. And he said, is it Hamza Shiraz who signed with Frank Warren? He said, I don't know what his issue is with me. So there's something else going on. I'll keep my ear out. Jamel Herring. I love this sport, but I owe it to my family to quit putting them through these moments. Thank you all. Whether you were with me or against me, you made me who I am. But it's time. So he's retiring. I mean, he lost a unanimous decision just the other week to Jermaine Ortiz, and that's on the back of losing to Shakur Stevenson. He probably realizes he doesn't have it anymore, which is unfortunate. I believe he could motivate himself to have one more fight and shut this loudmouth, Chris Primetime Colbert, shut his mouth up. Chris is a loudmouth. He was trolling Deontay Wilder, and everyone knows I'm not a fan of Wilder, but, you know, I kept it consistent. I wasn't impressed with Chris trolling Wilder, running his mouth. I wasn't impressed with it, and I said as much. And he lost his unbeaten record last time out to, is it Hector Luis Garcia? And I'd like to see him shut Chris Colbert's mouth up. What did Chris say on hearing Jamel was going to retire? You need to stick to your military service instead of boxing. Look, the trolling is going to get him attention, and hopefully it will get him the big fights he wants, and hopefully he'll have to take a couple of beatings too. I guess after his battle with Adam Balsky, the Alan Babbage cult keeps growing. It keeps growing. He won his eliminator, I believe it was, for the WBC Bridgerweight title. He was down in the first and nearly knocked out in the ninth after a punch was thrown by your boy Balski after the bell. It was a wild affair where Babbage outswung Balski, let's say, you know, and he won fair and square. Everybody who saw it was entertained, including me. But you have to wonder, if you pitch him in there with Oscar Rivas, he gets hurt badly, surely. Surely this can't end well for Babbage. Babbage is now 11-0, 10-sided distance. And no, he's not world class, but he is the ultimate television fighter. And I'm quoting someone else who said that this weekend. He is the ultimate television fighter. There's no doubt about that. Tommy Hearns used to say thank you, Mr. Stewart, when Manny would drop him back home after taking him to a boxing event. And that could be anywhere around America. Tommy was an impoverished kid from Detroit, shy. But boxing, as an amateur, took him around the world, showed him different cultures, showed him that there is more than the hood. So as cliched as it sounds, yes, boxing has to step in and has stepped in and rescued kids off the street. People have responded to Eddie Hearn's back and forth with Peter McCabe, like Kofi Yates. He said, people like this guy here will never understand coming from a privileged background. Kofi was an orphan. He had an ASBO at 11. Boxing taught him and helped him to use his head. It taught him how to act around different people. Boxing at grassroots isn't about fighting, it's for the kids. There's Kofi there. Richard Riakporhe, is it British Cruiserweight champion now? I'm living proof that boxing has the power to change lives. Boxing has instilled discipline in me, laser focus, drive, ambition and more. Youth are losing their lives in the streets daily, and sports such as boxing are saving them. Don't believe me? Come to the hood where I grew up. You know me, I always go to the old school shit, and I'm paraphrasing Tommy Farr, great British heavyweight. At the weigh-in to fight Joe Louis was asking Tommy, what were them marks on your back? Because his back was shredded up, marked up everywhere. And Tommy explained it by saying, oh, I had an accident or something. No, he accumulated all the scars on his body from when he used to be in the mines, the coal mines in Wales as a kid. His dad died from lung disease in the mines. And when you go in there at Tommy's age, because you're small, you're having to go through these little small gaps where bigger men couldn't go and do what work is necessary. And that's how them little kids are getting their back cut up like that. It's pretty precarious. And if you ask Tommy if he was still here, give me a choice, the coal mines or the ring. The ring every time for Tommy. A piece of piss compared to going in the pits, isn't it?